really didn't hear too much noise, too much news, because, you know, none of us had radios. Even if you had a radio, you couldn't pick it up.
So you were kind of in a vacuum?
Yeah, sort of, I would say. But we did have inclinations that there was trouble with the Japanese. In fact, during one of our rehearsals, as we called them, one night, they found a target out there, and we loaded the guns. This was just before Pearl Harbor. And they thought it was a Japanese submarine. Well, the big guns, once you load them, you can't fire them. Or you can't unload them. You have to fire them. So we had to stay in general quarters all night until the next morning to fire the guns. I don't think they use guns now, they use rockets.
Now, were you up in your position at that
Oh,
time?
yes, we were up on top.
You were up there all night?
Oh, yes, we were up there all night.
So what did you talk about? What sort of things, can you talk about what you talked about?
Well, we talked about, what are we doing here? What's the matter with those guys? Can't they figure it out? There's nobody after us. Why don't we? But we didn't realize at the time that they couldn't unload the guns. That's when we found out they couldn't unload the guns. Because we were musicians, we knew nothing about guns.
Would you ever write any music when you were up there in your idle moments?
No, because it was dark.
Towards that end, you must have known when you joined the service that there were things going on in Europe.
Yes.
What did that give you a sense? I don't think my uncle really thought that he would be going to war. I thought he was joining the band to get an education, to get a college degree, to get a job.
That's exactly what I thought too, because Steve and I talked about it.
Would you say that instead of me? Because
Yes, we talked about that. We knew that there was fighting in Europe and all that, what was going on in Europe. But if you remember, no, you would remember, I remember Franklin D. saying, we are not going to fight. If anybody wants to wants any of our products, they can come over here and get them. We will escort them, pay in gold, and we'll escort them to the 3-mile limit, and then it was up to them. But that didn't happen. We got into it.
Well, you know, this is the first time I've really ever heard anybody say what you just said.
That's
in terms
right.
of painting a picture.
They kept that quiet for many years.
How about the other fellows in the service? Well, you must have constantly heard different things. Were there anybody from Europe coming to your positions? Or
No.
Any Navy people?
Yes. We had one English ship that came into Pearl Harbor before it started, before we got bombed. Or was it after? No. It was before, I think. Well, anyway, what had happened, they had damage. And our band went over there and played for them. And they were going to give us our supper. And to our surprise, do you know what supper was? A can of tuna fish and a slice of bread and a cup of tea. And we had to open the tuna fish can. But they could only stay there 3 days, because that's the limitation of any country that's at war, to go into a neutral port. They can only stay 72 hours and they have to go out. That's what caught the German Bismarck. When they were down in South America, they had to leave in 72 hours, and the English Navy was waiting for them.
Was that the first ship you had seen that had any damage? Any sign? Your first sign of war?
Yes, yes.
What was that like? Did you talk to my uncle about that or anything?
Yeah, we talked about it when we were there to play. We talked about it. It had part of the bow knocked off, and there was holes in it. And we looked at each other and said, how do you think we could take care of this? And, you know, but we were young, and those parts really didn't flow through our heads. We saw it, but it wasn't as deep until we got into it. that's when we realized the depth of war. Especially that picture I showed you of the Wasps going down, that was one of our first battles. And that was an aircraft. I mean, we shot a lot of planes down, but see, they weren't so much after us, as they were after the aircraft carriers. That's who we tried to save all the time, was the aircraft carriers.
Did you train with the aircraft carriers when you were doing the rehearsals, as you called them?
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, the minute they said air alert, we circled around the aircraft carrier to defend it. You see, the aircraft carriers, they had a lot of aircraft defense guns, but we had more, and we could fire long distance.
Now, did the other guys on the ships give you guys tease you guys, or give you hard times? You guys
Yeah,
slack
oh
off.
yeah.
Tell us
Oh,
about that. Well, didn't you have a prestigious job?
Well, yes and no.
Okay. Can you tell us something about that?
The whole thing was the band always eats early. They always get the best, which was true. And you guys never do nothing. You never work. Well, my saying was to them all the time, because the guys were pretty good. I mean, they would tease us. I'd look at them and say, well, you work with your hands, with your back, with your legs. I work with my brain, or with my lips when I play. If you had learned how to play, you'd have had a job like I got, nice and easy. But damn it, I have to fight like you do when we go into action.
I bet they certainly appreciated
Yeah,
music at
well,
that point.
Anything for a laugh, because everything was. When you're out to sea, it's really tight. Because what a lot of people that's never been out there don't realize, out to sea, you don't know for the next 5 minutes whether you're going to be alive or not. And it kind of saps a little strength, because you never knew when you was going to go into action.
Did you all used to play music to match the emotions, or to counter match the emotions? How did that work?
Well, we just played the music that we had. There were segments of the fellows that liked jazz. There were segments that liked not really strict long hair music, but moderation of it, like some of the tunes in shows. But I don't remember them because it's been 60 years.
Yeah. How did the music? Like contemporary stuff that was just happening?
Yeah.
How did you get access to that? How did you even know about it if you were kind of blacked out?
Well, when we pull into ports, we could go buy music. See, like in Honolulu, we could go buy it when we were in Sydney to repair the ship, because we had traveled so many miles. That was a fascinating trip that we took in Sydney. We went to Sydney to patch up our boilers. We had 16 boilers on that ship. And when we pulled into Sydney to get them repaired, they looked at it and they said, we can't repair those. We figured we'd have a good time, Our men had to do it. They had weld plates on them, there was holes in them, and everything else. But we had a good time in Sydney, though. We were there about 30 days, repairing the ship. And the ship had 2 big dances, because only half the crew could leave the ship at a time. And they rented this big hall, which I have a picture of it. But the band, we were in great shape. I mean, we went both nights because we played. And there was 600 men on one night and 600 on the other. And they had a good time. They had women there so they could dance and everything. We had a good time there. But then when we had to leave, it was bad. We didn't want to go back out, but we did.
Why were your boilers down? Were that from battles or?
No, our boilers were down for the use. under full steam most of the time. When you're in battle, you go to full steam. That's 9,000 gallons of oil an hour. You see, we had 8 boilers that would make steam, and then we had 8 more boilers that would make superheated steam. Don't forget, you're pushing a big ship. It's got 4 screws. That's the propellers. There's 4 of them. They weighed 14 tons apiece, all solid bronze. And that could move that ship 35, 36 knots. That's fast.
That is fast.
Yeah.
In Honolulu, you didn't have any radio. So how did you know? How did you come up with music? Jazz. I'm talking about jazz now.
Well,
How did you know what was going on out there?
No, we had radios. Yes.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. When we were in port, we could use them. But out to sea, you couldn't use them. There was too much interference, and it would be too far because we didn't have shortwave. All it was just the regular. And when we were in Honolulu, if there was a new tune that come out, somebody go buy the orchestration.
And that was your own money that you would buy with?
Yeah, well, sometimes the guys would put up the money for it, but most of the time we were reimbursed by we used to call it a little gidonk stand on the ship. It was a stand where they sold ice cream, cigarettes, and they made money. Can you imagine? We used to buy cigarettes for 5 cents a pack, 50 cents a carton out at sea. And when we had that big shindig at Sydney, school band, we started a high school band, and we had an orchestra also, which I played in. And in the late 30s, early 40s, there was very little to do, and I was interested in music, and I was told that the Navy had bands that they would like. So I applied for it, and they wanted a letter from my pastor, from the mayor, and from the chief of police, which they received, accrediting me.
Okay. You could probably just leave it up. I don't know how involved you were in the different kinds of music at the time. You were in high school, but there was a lot of different kinds of things going on. Can you tell us a little something about,
Yes.
give us an idea what the...
In my junior year, or even before my junior year, we were with a 6-piece band of all kids, and we started playing for what we called tea dances on Friday afternoon. The band would play, and the students would pay 10 cents to hear us play and come in and dance. And with the 10 cents that we got from them, we bought music for our orchestra. And then later on, we played at nightclubs, and we were started pretty good. That's how I got my experiences of really playing jazz.
What sort of music, do you recall some of the music you're playing? And what were these years we're talking about?
Well, we played In the Mood, Don't Take Your Love Away From Me. We played Once in a While, and tunes like that. I can't remember them all.
There was other sorts of music, more traditional music at the time?
Yeah.
How did that all mix, or
Well,
was there no big deal?
I played in marching bands, and I played in the high school orchestra, which we played classical music, which helped a great deal in my learning how to read music.
Now, how about sharing with us the story of how you got the marching band together?
Well, that was quite a surprise. At the time, our school did not have a marching band. All we had was just an orchestra, which I played in. And I went to, one day I thought of having a marching band because I'd go to parades and stuff. And I asked one of our special teachers that I found out he played drums. And I asked him if he would be willing to start a band, a marching band. And he said he didn't know there wasn't any money for it. And if I could find pupils in school that would come and rehearse, he would be glad to head it. So I did. I found 15 other musicians, and we started practicing. And we formed a band, and the only uniform that we all had that was about the same was white pants and white shirts. And the first summer we went out, we won first place every place we paraded, except the one that we were competing with a 60-piece band. We were 16 kids that just played our hearts out. And we won enough prize money to buy uniforms. The following year, the school had a budget for a band. And I was the student director, which I have a pin for it.
Neat. So the mayor has signed the chief of the fire department,
Chief of police.
kind of saying what a neat,
Yes.
nice guy you are.
Right.
You're a good character. Good.
The character is what they were looking for.
So now what?
Well, when I graduated high school, my folks had a grocery store, and I really wasn't that interested in it. And I still wanted to play, and there wasn't too many playing jobs around. So somebody was telling me that the Navy had its own music school, and you could go there and join bands. So that's how I applied for it. And when I passed my physical in Buffalo, New York, they sent me down to Washington to the school, and there was 13 of us that took the music test, and only 3 of us passed it. And they told us that we would be there for 2 years, and then 4 years out with the fleet. So they sent me to Norfolk, Virginia for our military training. And I think it was in December, because I went in the Navy in September of 1941, or 40, and I came back to the school in December. And right away they put us playing with bands.
What were your band instructors, your Navy officers? What were they like?
Well, they were all pretty good. I finally wound up in the band that was going on the Arizona. And one day, I think it was around May of 41, there was 4 bands going out to Pearl Harbor to pick up our ships, and I was going on the Arizona. Well, this one day while we were rehearsing, the bandmaster kept telling me I was playing something wrong, and I started arguing with him that I was playing it right, and if he thought I was playing it wrong, why didn't he pick up his instrument and show me how it was done? And he told me he hadn't played his instrument in a long time, and he couldn't do it. And so I said, well, that's why you're a bandmaster. I said, you've been in the Navy 20 years, and you don't know whether it's right or wrong. So he thought I was belligerent, and he didn't want me in his band, so he transferred me. So I was transferred to the USS Honolulu, which was a big break for me.
So, at what point did you go from the States to Honolulu?
In June of 1941, all 4 bands left the music school, and we went to California, and from there we went to Pearl Harbor to pick up our ships.
So how did you went by another ship to get
By
to your...
another ship. Yeah, we went by an aircraft carrier ship. A repair ship, not an aircraft carrier, it was a repair ship.
Was this your first sea duty? What
That
was it?
was my first sea duty.
Tell us your Navy side of it for a little bit.
Well, the first night I figured, what am I doing here? Then as the days went on, they had different, the bands, we gave concerts for the guys, we played jazz, and they had boxing there, and we played for them because they had a big deck, because it was a repair ship. And we had really fun. After we got used to it, it was really fun that we went to Pearl Harbor.
So, would you, for my family, would you start telling us a little something about this gentleman that you started playing with? I guess we're going back to Washington. When did you first meet my uncle?
Okay, I met Steve when I went in on the Honolulu band, because he was already in the Honolulu band. And we became pretty good friends, because there was only 3 of us in the band that were from New York State. He was from Hammondsport, I was from Mount Morris, and one of the other trumpet players was from Cuba. All 3 of us were from small towns. But Steve and I hit it out pretty good. We were good friends. And we talked about our hometowns and so on and so forth. And when we get a little bit kind of in a depression, we'd seek each other out and talk.
What instruments did you all play in this band, and how many pieces were? Can you tell us a little something about your
Okay,
band?
the band had 20 men and 1 director, which made 21. We had 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, and in the trombone section, 1 of them had to play a baritone. We had 2 bass players, which Steve was one of them, and 1 of them had to play the bass fiddle. And we had we had 2 drummers, we had 5 saxophone players, all of them had to play clarinet. But we had 1 that played the sax. He played a little E-flat clarinet, which you don't see anymore, but he also played the guitar. And we had a piano player, and 1 piano player.
Any percussion?
Yes, we had 2 drummers.
So, you started playing on that group. What was the name of that group?
Band 15. The bands were numbered. We played, our job mostly was when we were in port, we would play, the band would go eat early, and then we'd play during the noon hour for the crew while they were eating. Sometimes we'd play classical music, sometimes we'd play jazz, it all depended. And then either 2 or 3 nights a week, we would stay and we'd play before a movie. This was while we were in port. And in the morning, the first thing in the morning, we'd get up on the main deck around 10 minutes to 8. And at 8 o'clock sharp, we would play the national anthem for the colors to go up. And then for a half an hour, we would play for calisthenics. And then in the morning, we'd go down, probably have a cup of coffee, and then rehearse the band. And in the afternoon, we'd rehearse the band again. And then if we went on Liberty.
Can you tell us a little something about Liberty?
Well, we were there. We'd go to Honolulu, we could go to Waikiki Beach, but our funds were very limited because at the time we were making a great big salary of $36 a month. But we could go in the afternoon. They had a Navy, like a little cafeteria that we could go, and it was around the bay, and we could